All right, good evening, everyone. It is Monday, January 18th, 2021, and I am going to call to order the Cascade Charter Township Planning Commission meeting at this time and record the attendance, which all members are present. And with that, we will go on to the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag. Wait for the flag to come up. I pledge allegiance
to the
the
flag
United States of America,
and to the
to
republic
for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible,
liberty and
justice for all.
Thank you, everyone. And with that, we'll move to Article 3, which is to approve the current agenda.
Member Johnson approves.
Member Deering supports.
Thank you, Member Johnson, and thank you for the support, Member Deering. All those in favor say aye.
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 Anyone opposed? Motion carries. Moving on to Article 4, which is to approve the minutes of the January 4th, 2020 meeting.
I usually approve them, but I was not here, so someone else can take it.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Thank you, Member Slater. Do we have support? Oh, we have support from Member Rappin. Any discussion?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Yes, Member Johnson.
I would like to suggest a change under Article 7, election of officers. At the top of page 3, second paragraph, under the motion made by Member Slater, it says that Member Moxley is going to remain as vice chair. And I believe that was intended to be Member Johnson.
Oh, you're right.
Member Moxley did bring that to my attention earlier, and it has been changed in the draft minutes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Actually, I have another correction.
Okay.
At the very beginning, it says Vice Chairman Reese called the meeting to order, and it's Chairman Reese.
I will note that as well. Thank you.
My motion stands with those changes.
Thank you, Member Slater. Member Rappin, do you still support that?
I do.
Thank you. All those in favor say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, that carries. So we move on to Article 5. At this time, we acknowledge visitors and those wishing to speak on non-agenda items. We do have a couple agenda items. I suppose if you wanted to bring that up, we wouldn't hold it against you. You could do that too. We limit your comments to 5 minutes per speaker. We ask that you give your name and address at the beginning. And if you're on a touch-tone phone, you need to do *9 to be connected, or you can raise your hand electronically at this time if you wish to make a comment. And staff will check here a second and see if we have anybody.
There are no raised hands.
Wonderful. Then we will move right along to Article 6, which is for the Subaru dealership on 28th Street, case number 20-3599. Let's pass this one on to Brian.
Great, thank you. So in your packet, you should see the amendments to the PUD ordinance for that Fox Subaru project, which the Planning Commission awarded preliminary approval of at our last meeting on January 4. That was after holding a public hearing for that project at our December 7 meeting. The PUD ordinance amendments have been reviewed by the applicant and addresses the approval from that January 4 meeting. The applicant has continued to work on some of those items that we requested in the conditions. They've submitted a final photometric plan and have moved forward with that lot combination. So they're checking those boxes there as well. In the PUD amendments, you'll see that they provided some information for the signage on the site, and that's consistent with what we have at those other existing buildings in that PUD as well. If you agree with the amendments there, you should forward a positive recommendation onto the Township Board for approval of the PUD amendment and site plan, and the Township Board will hold an additional public hearing to consider your recommendation.
Thank you, Brian. Does anyone have questions of staff at this time? Does the applicant wish to add anything at this point? If they do so, they could raise their hand electronically, but if they don't, we'll just move along without them.
The applicant is in attendance, but there are no raised hands.
Excellent. Anybody have any comments or discussion on this? I looked through it and it looked to be pretty much exactly what we discussed the last, I don't know how many times it's been, 3 or 4, so. Any thoughts, any actions? We have to make a recommendation to the Township Board on this one.
Mr. Chair,
Yes,
Member Johnson will move case 20-3599 with a positive recommendation to the Township Board for approval.
thank you, Member Johnson.
Member Kreider supports.
Thank you, Member Crater, for the support. Any discussion? I'm seeing none. So all those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Hearing none, that motion carries unanimously. So with that, we move on to Article 7, which is probably always the most exciting item of the year. And really the only time we ever really get to see Ben. So I don't know if the two go together there or not, but I'll throw this one right at Ben here for the capital improvement plan.
Great, thank you. Like I was mentioning at the beginning of the meeting, it's great to see everybody. Hopefully at some point this year, we'll be back in person. Just wanted to tell you how much I appreciate you guys buying into the Zoom meetings. It's been a whirlwind over the past 9 months or so, and hopefully we're here at the end of it. Just to let you guys know too that our staff has been working on upgrading the capabilities in the Wisner Center as well. The hope is that once things go back to normal, we'll be able to come up with some type of hybrid meeting plan. What we found, at least at the board level, is that we're actually getting more public participation by allowing people to, sit at their homes and watch the movie, what's going on, watch the board meeting, to see what's going on, to be able to comment. I don't think the legislature will ever change the Open Meetings Act, so we will be able to be 100% virtual, but by having some type of hybrid operation, I think we'll be able to improve our communications with residents. So still all virtual for the time being, but I think it was the trial by fire made us realize that it was time to update our technology. So with that, I'm going to give you the virtual capital improvement presentation. So me and Cassie will be tag teaming this. She is going to be running the slideshow and I'm going to be narrating. If you need me to stop at any point, I've only got a couple of you on the screen on the side, so pipe up. And then when we get to the actual projects, I will stop at the end of each department if anybody has any questions. But what we're looking at is the 2021 to 2026 capital improvement plan for Cascade Charter Township. And the next slide. All right. So you guys have all seen this before, but I still wanted to go through it for anybody that might be in the public. So the capital improvement plan outlines a schedule of potential capital expenditures for the next 6 years. I try to make sure that I emphasize this point every time I give this presentation, but the capital improvement plan is a planning document. It's not a budget document. So in order for a project to come out of the capital improvement plan and actually be implemented, not only does it have to have money appropriated towards it during the budget process, but the Township Board actually has a process where they approve capital improvement projects individually as well. So they would have to not only put it in the budget, but then the project would actually come back to the board individually to be approved. So the CIP really serves as a roadmap for us to understand what big items might be coming up in the next 6 years. It helps our departments prepare administratively, and then it helps the township prepare financially as well. If there's big costs on the horizon, gives us an opportunity to possibly save money for those projects. So to be included in the capital improvement plan, the project has to be consistent with one of 3 things. And it looks like this got cut off a little bit. This would say should be consistent with the master plan or a master plan of the township. Doesn't have to be the master plan, could be the Parks and Rec plan, could be the pathway plan, could be the facilities plan, so on and so forth. I'm sure all of you are familiar with all those plans. Another way to be included is it has to be consistent with a state or federal requirement. There's a third bullet in there as well that's not showing up, but it has to be consistent with a township approved policy. So it may not be technically in a plan, but it may be part of a policy. And then typically they should be at least $10,000. So, capital improvement is physical. And a lot of times we buy physical things that don't reach that level of being a capital improvement. So that's why you don't see things like, computers and other smaller items that our departments may be purchasing. So Cass, if you can go on to the next slide.
Looks like we're missing some graphics.
I'm pretty sure that was not a blank one. I can pull it up on my screen if you give me the opportunity to share.
Okay. I'm not exactly sure which Cascade Township you are. There are 3 of you.
Ben, if you talk again, we'll see your mic move.
Ah, good idea. So I'm the
Is
one
it-
with the mic moving right now.
Got it. Okay, thank you. Is it the spotlight for everyone option? Or,
If you go down to share screen, there should be a little icon kind of in the corner. If you click on that, you can go into a setting where you can allow everybody to share.
That sounds scary.
It's like we only have one non-panelist, so I think we're good.
yeah, I
Looks like it's Supervisor Lesference, so I
don't see the option to allow shares.
You can probably trust that one.
I don't think she's going to hijack it.
Probably not.
All right, then what I'm going to do, Kat, do you have your email up right now, Cassie?
Yeah,
I'm going to shoot you an email of a PDF copy that I have of it.
okay.
Well, we can follow along in the packet too.
Yeah.
That is the graphic that's missing. You're right. With the blue squares.
All right, Cassie, I just sent it to you.
Well, while we have the pause, Ben, I'll ask a question.
All right.
Because I was going to ask it anyways, so I'll just get it over with right now.
Perfect.
I noticed in the past you always have the major dam repair fund in there on a slide, and I didn't see it in there this time. And I was curious how come it didn't make the cut?
Yep. So there are no scheduled projects for the dam right now. Now I know the company that runs our dam is working on that process for us. But when I talked to them this year, they said they're reevaluating the improvements they think they need to make. And they hope to have something for me by the end of this year to include in the plan. But they didn't have any anticipated projects for 2021 either.
Okay, and now I thought in the last CIP, they had a project in there to replace the wall on the back side. And then I don't know that ever really happened.
Yeah, so I know they did have their 5-year update with FERC this past year. So it's possible that fell out of the 5 years, or maybe it got moved.
Okay.
So I'm not telling you right now there isn't any dam
Sure.
projects that'll happen in the next 5 years. I don't have any information from them to include right now.
Understood.
Any
Can
luck,
you see my
Cassie?
screen?
Nope, we're not seeing your screen right now.
I was happy to see money was allocated for planning of the pedestrian bridge Burton over I-96.
Yeah, yep. So that's a project that's well on its way right now. So we're working on the final engineering. There's a couple of easements that are required that Steve and the engineering team have been working with the residents over there to try to figure out. So that one's been a long time coming, and we'll be happy when that project is finally underway.
Yeah, badly needed.
Hey, Cassie, why don't you just go back to the one you had, and we can, the members can follow along in their packet as well.
Did we lose Cassie?
Any luck, Cassie?
No, it's not looking like it.
Are you guys okay if I move along and you're able to follow along in the packet?
Yeah.
Please do.
Good deal. So the next slide shows the capital improvement plan process. Again, something that you guys should be familiar with. So the capital improvement plan starts with the individual department proposals. Those are brought to me by the township department heads. Not only any proposals that they want to see put in the plan, but we also review the proposals from previous years as well. So as you can imagine, if you put in a proposal that would schedule to be in 2021, but you started in 2016, tend to be some updates through the year. So even the ones that remain in the plan get reviewed and updated as appropriate. The next step is the CIP review committee assessment. So our capital improvement plan review committee is the infrastructure committee of the township board. So did have an opportunity to meet with them. They had an opportunity to review the plan and ultimately kicked it on to the next level, which is now the planning commission review. So after the CIP review, the 6-year capital improvement program and the first year capital improvement budget is developed. That goes to you guys, the planning commission review and adoption. Then if you do choose so, we ask that you pass a resolution that recommends that the township board approve it as well. So again, a little bit different between the 6-year capital improvement plan and the first year capital improvement budget. So the 6-year capital improvement plan is a mid-range planning document, and it describes all the proposals submitted by the departments. If you get to the back of the plan, there's a lot more detail, but there's an assessment and prioritization of each project as well. And I'll talk about that in the slide as how we get to those. This is adopted by the planning commission and then approved by the township board. The plan also includes a first year capital improvements budget. This is a short range budget document. It recommends capital needs to be funded, identifies the expected revenue sources, and that's submitted by myself to the township board for adoption as part of the regular budget adoption process. Cassie, if you can go to the next slide. So obviously there's a lot of benefits to the capital improvement plan. Really, it helps focus attention on what we're doing on community goals, needs, and capabilities. Again, these aren't projects that the staff and the department heads are just making up. We're diving into those planning documents of the community and pulling these things out, things that the community has told us that they want, so that we can work on implementation of those items. It optimizes use of the taxpayers' dollars to make sure that we know when projects are planned so we can save accordingly. And if there's any efficiencies by combining projects. or doing projects at the same time. So it guides our future growth and development, helps us identify where some of those investments are needed, encourages the most efficient government. So our capital improvement plan is provided to all of our governmental partners as well. So if there are projects that cross jurisdictions, there's an opportunity to collaborate on those as well. You know, a good example would be if we are looking to do a utility improvement and a road improvement around the same time, we want to make sure those happen coalesced with each other so that we're not tearing up new roads to put in water sewer infrastructure or vice versa. Maintains a sound and stable financial program. As we're doing our budget projections, we're always looking at the capital improvements to understand when that money might be needed. And a big one is it enhances our federal and state grant opportunities. The one thing that granting agencies hate is when you make up projects just because they have money available. And by having our capital improvement plan, we're able to go to these agencies and say, no, we didn't just decide you have $1 million and we want that $1 million. This is something that's important to our community. We've been planning for it for a while, and they like to see that there's more thought behind the projects than just people with their hands out. Cassie, if you could go to the next slide, please. So as I mentioned, the capital improvement plan comes with project prioritizations as well. So when we have 4 prioritizations for our projects, the top prioritization is essential. These are urgent, high priority projects that could be done if at all possible. And typically these projects are going to, if they're not done, they're going to mean some type of loss for the township, whether it be a negative effect in the community, a financial loss, something that could potentially hurt our organization exponentially. You'll find that the most important projects in the plan are rated as essential. Then you're going to find that the most projects in the plan are prioritized as desirable. So these are high priority projects. They're projects that have gone through the vetting process. They've come out in these master plans or policies or all of those other objective places that we talked about. And they need to be done when funding becomes available. So it doesn't quite go up to the level of essential, but these are still projects that the township should be finding a way to do. Next 2 bottom ones are acceptable and deferrable. We do have a couple projects in the capital improvement plan that are rated at that acceptable level. They're projects that again have been identified, but there may not be a lot of excitement around them, or they may not coalesce with other projects that are going on at the time. For the 8th year in a row since I've been doing this, we don't have any deferrable projects in the capital improvement plan. So typically you'll find if a project is going to be rated as deferrable, it probably doesn't raise to the level to be included in the capital improvement plan anyways. But we keep that in there because we think it's good to identify that. Cassie, if you could go to the next slide. So we have a whole source of funding sources that are available to fund projects in our capital improvement plan. You're going to find the most common funding source is millage funding. We have 6 millage funds in the township budget. So we have our general fund, we have our fire fund, our police fund, our pathways fund, our open space fund, and our library fund. The general fund is the only one that's not a voted millage of the township. The rest of them have all been voted on at various times by the township residents. And in fact, we have 3 fire millages and 2 police millages. So there's a good precedent for our residents funding the services that they desire here in the township. Another common one is general obligation and revenue bonds. And while these are a separate item, a lot of the times the funding to pay the debt service on these bonds can come from millage funding as well, especially general obligation bonds, where you're really using your taxing power to pledge the retirement of the debt. So you can take out a general obligation bond using the taxes that you're currently collecting. You can also have a voter approved general obligation bond as well, where the millage is flexible in order to make the debt service every year. And then you have revenue bonds as well. These come from user charges and other income to pay debt and backed by full faith and credit of the township. In a typical municipality, revenue bonds are really popular to fund water and sewer improvements. because we don't own the water and sewer system, we don't use revenue bonds. The township doesn't use revenue bonds for that. But a lot of times we can use revenue bonds through the city of Grand Rapids. And in our plan, that's referred to as system financing. And then the rates among the ratepayers are adjusted accordingly to recover the money needed for those bonds. Tax increment financing is a big revenue source for us as well, particularly in the DDA. We've talked about DDA funding a lot in the past, but the DDA collects taxes above the base taxable value for certain millages in the township. Includes the township millages, as well as the county millages, the community college millage, and the library as well. And they can use those funds only to make improvements in the DDA area. If you go to the next slide, Cassie. There's a whole host of other ways you can fund things as well. Federal and state grants are always out there. We've talked about that. Entitlements, we get a big chunk of revenue sharing from the state. Those funds can be used for capital improvement projects. We've done special assessments in the past. We did the Oak Terrace water extension a couple years ago, the Craft Avenue water sewer extension, most recently the Thornapple River Drive water sewer extension. So we can use special assessments. A lot of times, especially again with water and sewer improvements, we'll have a developer come in and they will contribute, put in the infrastructure on their own, and then dedicate it to the township and the city of Grand Rapids. And sometimes they also pay for improvements. I already talked about the utility system funding. Again, that would be bonding that would be paid for by the city of Grand Rapids, but then would be collected through the water and sewer rates. And there's a whole host of other funds as well: capital leases, dedicated revenue, sales of assets. But the ones that I've covered are the most common ones that you're going to see in the plan. So Cassie, if you can go to the next slide. So this is a rundown of the capital improvement plan in its entirety. So over the next 6 years, we've identified 47 projects totaling $27,763,000. And you can see the breakdown there of where the potential projects are. And then looks like I need to update the 6-year plan. That should say fiscal year 2021 through 2026. And the dollar amounts that are needed for those projects as well. So now I'm going to stop here for a second to see if there's any questions before we delve into the individual projects in each one of those departments and kind of digest this chart a little bit further. Anybody? Going once?
I have
Going
one
twice?
question.
All right. What's your question?
Oh, sorry. Okay.
No
I
problem.
thought you were moving on. What are the boundaries of the DDA?
Yeah, so I'll answer that question in generalities because the DDA boundary is pretty specific, but it's really going to be our commercial area extending from Patterson all the way down to Cascade Road along 28th Street. And then when you get to Cascade Road, really goes south to the bridge and north to the veterinarian's office. Now, I will say, as you go along that stretch of 28th Street, the depth of it varies in certain places. So, we capture most of the commercial area of the Centennial Office Park. To the south, we capture the Cascade Office Park. On the other side of the I-96 overpass, kind of to the north, we capture part of the residential neighborhood behind the DNW. So there's certain widths along there, but in general, that's what you can find. If you're interested in seeing the exact specifications, we do have a map of that in the DDA section up on our website.
Okay, thanks.
No problem. All right, hearing nobody else, we're going to move on to the next slide. All right. So the first slide is the administration and our general fund. These projects should look semi-familiar to you. So every year we start our budget out with $400,000 for our local road maintenance program. And just a reminder that for every dollar we put into our local road maintenance, it is matched, by the road commission as well. So if we put in $400,000, the road commission matches and puts in another $400,000, which gets us some pretty significant work during the year. In 2018 to 2019, we spent a significant amount of money on roads over those 2 years. The township itself invested about $2.5 million, and that was matched by the road commission as well. So for 2021, and this is actually extension out of a project that we had initially anticipated doing in 2020, we're also looking at repaving the roads in the Centennial Office Park and what's referred to as the Foremost Industrial Park, which is really 33rd Street and the kind of the side streets that come off of Craft Avenue in between 28th and 36th. We had planned on doing this project in 2020. We had also planned on bonding for this project. When we got to the point to look at the bonding was really when the pandemic hit and the municipal bond market was going haywire. So the infrastructure committee and the personnel finance committee decided to delay this project until we knew a little bit more about those bond markets, and eventually it got pushed to 2021. So personnel finance committee is back to looking at financing for that project to see what may be needed. So we have a couple smaller projects, a phone system replacement project for township administration in fiscal year 2021, as well as a township hall generator. And then 22, we replace our administrative copiers and our township servers every 4 to 5 years. And right now we have that scheduled for 2022. And I see another item I have to correct as well. It looks like the numbers don't add up across the line for the copier and the server. So I will update that appropriately. Any questions about the administrative section? All right, if we can go to the next slide, Cassie. So the next one is our park improvements. So we have a big project planned for 2021, and that is the replacement of our buildings and grounds facility down at the rec park. So again, this was a project originally planned for 2020. The pandemic kind of upended what we were trying to do. We did get most of the engineering done for this project. We anticipate this project is going to be completed in 2021. For fiscal year 2022, 23, and 24, we have 3 F-250 crew cabs that our buildings and grounds department uses. We replace those on 10-year schedules. So 22, 23, and 24 is when those are due to be replaced. And then we also have a large piece of our mowing equipment, our Toro Groundmaster, that has reached the end of its useful life as well. And we are anticipating replacing that. Any questions about the buildings and grounds department?
And do you know what model Groundsmaster that is? Probably not.
Yeah, I should know that you would ask that question, but I don't know what model it is.
When we used to mow the park years ago, we had 2 Groundsmasters that we bought just to mow Cascade Park, and it had a 10.5-foot wide cut. And my business partner and I were very shocked when one day I cut the same acreage per hour on a 72-inch zero-turn rider that cost several $1,000s less than he mowed on a Toro Groundsmaster. So I hope that they're doing their due diligence and making sure they're buying the most efficient piece of equipment there. That's my comment.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. I appreciate that perspective.
If anybody wants to talk to me or anything about it, give them my number. But I know a thing or two about lawn equipment. So.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Scott. Any other questions about the buildings and grounds section? All right, we'll move on to the next slide. So we've spent quite a bit of money in the cemetery the past couple of years. We still have a little bit of the 30th Street Cemetery project to figure out, and that is the cemetery sign. So this is a carryover from that project, and we'll figure out how to put up an appropriate sign for the cemetery. If you guys haven't had a chance to check it out, the cemetery project came out fantastic. We're hoping that as the landscaping finishes taking hold and the grass finishes taking hold, we will start burials in part of the new part of the cemetery sooner rather than later. If you have had a chance to make it over to the cemetery, you may have noticed that we switched the traffic flow around. So it used to be you used to go into the two outer drives and then out the middle drive, and that was causing some issues with traffic flow. So now you can go in the middle drive and out the two side drives, and that's going to help us with the signage into the cemetery as well. And then to the surprise of some, we also have two smaller cemeteries in the township, the Whitneyville Cemetery and the Snow Cemetery. We're looking to make sure that we continue our upkeep on those cemeteries as well to make them attractive burial spots for our residents. So we've plugged some money into the 2022 budget to make those improvements. Any questions about the cemetery fund, the cemetery department? All right, we're going to move on to our parks. Again, just a couple projects right now. We spent a lot of money 2 or 3 years ago to update our parks. But if you've been into the rec park lately, you may have noticed that the drive into the park as well as the main parking lot is in need of some improvements. So Steve has been working on that with our engineering firm, and we're anticipating doing that paving in 2022. One of those deferrable projects that I talk about from time to time in our parks and our parks plan, it talks about fishing piers, expanding of the fishing opportunities in Tassel Park and McGraw Park. So you've seen these projects in the plan for a couple years now, and we've pushed those back to 2023 as we figure out exactly what those projects should look like. Any questions about the parks department? All right, so then we're going to move on to community development. So the first two line items on here pretty much go hand in hand. One of the things that we've been talking about for a while now is the 36th Street interchange area. So, if you're driving to Cascade Township on the highway, there's, really two entrances into Cascade. If you get off on 28th Street, it's, pretty welcoming. You're in Cascade right away. If you get off on 36th Street by the airport, you're kind of dumped into the middle of nowhere. And we'd like to focus on making that a nice entryway into the township as well. We think that's a big project. We've budgeted or put in the plan a little bit more money for that project to dress that up. And then the idea after that would be to try to pick off each one of these entryway areas in the township one by one and kind of dress them up to be more welcoming to the people coming into the township. Steve has gotten a proposal for us to kind of design this part of the project in 2021. If that's ultimately accepted by the board, we would start implementing it in 2022 with that big 36th Street interchange project. And then down here, this third line, this is one of those ones that I talk about keeping projects in the plan based on what opportunities might come up. There's a large swath of railroad right-of-way behind the businesses that are on 52nd Street south of the airport. And there's been talk, kind of starts and fits about possibly re-energizing that area. Some of the tracks have been taken off, but the easement itself actually still exists. And some of the business down there at some point had talked about the need for possible rail access for shipping goods. The airport has talked about possibly advertising the property that they have as available for having rail availability as well. So we keep this in here. If those opportunities arise, we'll be able to demonstrate to people that, yes, this has been something the township has been interested in for a while, if that need and that ability eventually comes up. Any questions about the community development department?
Yes, Ben, I've got a question.
All right.
On the 36th Street interchange streetscape signage, has there been any coordination with the airport here on what they might like to do in that area as well for their identity?
Yeah, yep. So I'd say the coordination is probably at the just talk level at that point. We've been keeping the airport kind of abreast for the past couple of years now. In fact, we may have talked about it when you were at the airport too, about our wants to address this up. And I know the airport does have some signage there, but yes, we definitely identify the airport as a key community partner when we're devising that, because that is, a majority of the traffic coming off of 96 to the airport is going to go through that interchange.
Thank you.
Any other questions about community development? All right, so we're moving out of the general fund now and into our special revenue funds. The next one's going to be the fire department. So for fiscal year 21, we have a couple projects, just like we talked about in the buildings and grounds department. We have regular vehicle replacement schedule for our fire department as well. We have 2 vehicles scheduled to be replaced this year. That's our Medic 11 Suburban and our Chiefs vehicle. And those vehicles actually get replaced every 5 years, but they're passed down to different slots. So, one of those vehicles will probably get passed down to our inspectors that they take when they do fire inspections. Another one of those vehicles will get passed down to a runaround vehicle that some of our department members may take to training. So even though those 2 vehicles are replaced every 5 years, we get 10 years use minimum out of each one of those vehicles. And then eventually at the bottom, they're put to auction. Next item on the list is the hose replacement. So we're trying to get, in the past, we had done reactive hose replacement, where we have to have our hoses tested every year. We'd have our hoses tested, and whatever failed the test, we would replace. We're moving to a proactive measure now. So we're going to give our hoses a lifetime, just like we do our other pieces of equipment. And then once the hose reaches that end of that lifetime, it's going to be replaced. So we've kind of scheduled every other year as part of our hose replacement process. So this next one, the Buttrick Station outbuilding and fire station number 1 replacement are pretty interrelated. So we have been going through about a 2-year process now to plan for the replacement of fire station number 1. And if you guys aren't doing anything tomorrow night, log back into Zoom, where we're going to be presenting our initial draft of our recommendations to the public to get some feedback on what they like and what they don't like, and introduce that project to the public. And then it has probably another 2-month process it needs to go through for revisions based on public feedback, go through the various committee structures. But the anticipation is sometime before the end of the 3rd quarter, we'll be asking the township board to make a decision on the direction of that project. The Buttrick Station outbuilding is related to that for a couple different reasons. One, when we do replace fire station number 1, if we do go with a recommendation to replace it where it sits now, we're going to need to have some temporary operating space. And part of that temporary operating space will have to have a outbuilding to store off-season equipment. But the reality of it is that the outbuilding at Buttrick Station is probably long overdue. Our facilities are already overcrowded, even over at Station 2. So even if the township board made the decision not to do anything with the fire station 1 and continue to operate it as is, the outbuilding is recommended just as a basic storage need. So you'll see that the outbuilding is in 2021 and the fire station is in 2022. I can see both of these projects, if they're approved by the township board, happening beginning this year. The outbuilding would be completed this year. Fire station number 1 probably wouldn't be completed well into 2022 if it did happen. So in between those two, for 2022, we have the replacement of our snowplow / grass truck skid unit. The snowplow truck is also one of those trucks that would typically be scheduled to be replaced every 5 to 10 years. It doesn't get used all that often, so we're actually putting off the replacement of that truck another 5 years. But we do need to update the skid unit in the back so that when we have grass fires, we can take that to the grass fires. In 2023, Buttrick Station is due for a HVAC upgrade. That'll be about 25 years old at that point, and we'll need to start looking at that replacement. And then we have some regular replacements as well. So engine number 5 is on a 15-year replacement schedule. So at the end of 15 years, then that engine goes to reserve status for 5 years before it's eventually disposed of. Tender 4 would also be on that 15-year schedule, but again, because the use of it isn't as heavy as some of our other equipment, the fire department is recommending a refurbish of that vehicle instead of a complete replacement. That $200,000 refurbish should get us another 10 years out of that vehicle, which will be a good investment for the township. And then the fire department is going to the 800 megahertz radio system in 2021. And the lifespan of those radios is anticipated to be 5 to 7 years. So starting in 2026, we'll be replacing those radios on a regular basis. So the fire department's obviously a very capital intensive service that we provide to the residents. And I think the capital improvement plan reflects that. You guys have any questions about the fire department? All right, then we're going to move on to the pathways. So if you drove around the township at all over the past year, you saw that the work was fast and furious as we completed 4 of the 5 pathway extensions that we had committed to when the millage was passed in 2018. And the last project to be done is the pathway extension over Burton Street. So I will say that this estimate at $2 million is probably a little bit low at this point. We did have an infrastructure committee meeting earlier this month, and our engineers had indicated that cost is creeping up a little bit as some nuances to the project are discovered. So ultimately, once that's approved by the board, that number might be a little bit higher. But remember, the township got a significant grant for this project. So I believe that grant's about $1.5 million that we applied for and got from the MDOT Transportation Alternatives Grant Program. So excited to get that project underway this year. That is something that has been in the township master plans and strategic plans and all of that for quite a bit of time, and will help to get our residents over I-96 on Burton Street to connect to the sidewalk system in Kentwood, which you can eventually take all the way to downtown Grand Rapids. We have 2 Bobcats in our fleet for our Buildings and Grounds Department. The first Bobcat is funded by the general fund that was replaced a couple years ago. The second Bobcat is actually split 50-50. This $61 is the full amount, but the cost of it is split 50-50 between the pathway fund and our DDA fund, because obviously we use that equipment to work in both of those places as well. And then for 2024, we have 3 pathway extensions that have been in the plan for a while. These are extensions from our current pathway system up to the elementary schools. The idea behind these extensions was to tap into the state's Safe Route to Schools program. In order to tap in those funds, the project actually really has to be led by the schools. And our past conversations with them, I don't want to say there wasn't any interest, but at that time it wasn't a priority for them. We always keep it in the plan in case it does come up that we want to make those extensions. Or if the township decides that even without the Safe Routes to School grants, those are good extensions for the townships to make. So this one always gets pushed out a couple years, but with our recent expansions being done coming 2021, we'll probably take another hard look if that Safe Routes to School program makes sense for us in our elementary schools here. Any questions about the pathway fund?
I have one question on the, sorry.
Go ahead, Ben.
On the Bobcat replacement, I was just curious if it's a 2021 or a 2022. The totals on the bottom suggest that's 2022. The column suggests it was 2021.
Good catch. It is 2021. I will make that update. Thank you, Ben.
I was going to say that I definitely think the pathway extension to Pine Ridge is needed. So when the kids are trying to walk up and down the bus drive, and the buses and traffic are coming in and out, it's not a good mix.
Yeah, yeah.
I disappointed that the district didn't think that through when they put that driveway in the first place. But there's a lot of kids that walk down the path on Cascade Road and then run up the hill.
Yeah. And I understand that there's new administration at those schools as well since the last time that we had those conversations. So again, with our flux of extensions coming to a close in 2021, it'll probably be a ripe opportunity for us to figure out if those make sense sometime in the next couple of years. Yeah, see, we can go on to the next slide. I promise we're reaching the end here, guys. So this one will probably look a lot different next year because we are currently finishing up our update to our water and sewer master plans. But these are a couple projects that have been here for a long time. We took a hard look at the Burton Street highway crossing, the water main, to do that in conjunction with the pathway, the pedestrian bridge that was going across. The thought was that there may be an opportunity for us to actually hang that water main off the bottom of that bridge. But that project or that the ability to do that turned out too cumbersome for a couple of reasons. One, our engineers really aren't convinced that that's the best way to put in that water main or that it would even be approved eventually. But the other issue is that because of the grant funding for the pedestrian bridge crossing, that goes through the federal funding process. There's a whole host of requirements that come along with using those funds. If we were to do the project in conjunction with the bridge, we would also have to, that project would also be subject to those same federal regulations. And that would not be cost effective for us. So the water master plan, when it does come out, is still going to show a needed crossing in this area. It's more than likely that the bore and jack method is going to be the most effective way for us to make that crossing. So we'll actually go under the expressway. But again, it's a good exercise to look at all the options when these projects are coming forward to making sure that if there are any efficiencies to be had, that we can capture them. The other one on here is water sewer extension on 52nd Street. So back in 2013 and 2014, the township made a significant investment to extend water and sewer down Craft Avenue between 52nd and 60th Street in order to entice commercial development. So that means that that whole industrial area southwest of the airport is served with water and sewer, except for the portion of 52nd Street that goes past Craft Avenue towards the airport. There's several parcels there that still aren't served with water and sewer. Again, this is probably in here as a matter of opportunity more than anything else. I don't think that this project happens without a significant development partner needing water and sewer, but we keep it in here to identify it as a need, and again, potentially to tap into any revenue sources that might come available to do any type of economic development-led infrastructure work. But as I mentioned, again, we're working on the water sewer plan. I think you'll see quite a bigger list of water sewer improvements or possible water and sewer improvements in our 2022 to 2027 capital improvement plan. Is there any questions about this one?
Yeah, if I'm not mistaken, I thought you mentioned that to us last year regarding perhaps the need for expansion for residential water. So I was shocked not to see any projects in here this time along.
Yeah. You know, again, we like to tie the projects back to something specific. So we're really hoping for that next iteration of the water sewer plan to be finalized so we can start populating the plan with those projects.
Manager Swayze, I have a question that relates to this. I guess I'm really, I don't even know what the word is, disappointed that it's not accounted for, given all of the pollution that the airport has caused to destroy a great number of our citizens' water supply. I mean, you've seen the test results that I've seen. Why wouldn't we allocate funds to provide hookup and water to those citizens?
Yeah, yep. So the plan isn't indicating that we're not going to do that. In fact, the township is working hand in hand with the city of Grand Rapids in conjunction with the airport to develop a grant application right now. so that the state of Michigan has a grant opportunity open. That they opened in the middle of December and are closing at the end of January for funding specifically for those types of projects. So we're continuing to, to chase after those opportunities. And in reality, if the water sewer plan was done at this point, those projects are going to be in that plan. And then that gives us the opportunity to plug it in as an official adopted plan of the township.
Fair enough. I mean, my guidance to you is you get this to the township board level and citizens start to see it. Luckily, we don't have many on the line tonight. Speaking as a homeowner whose water supply has been destroyed by our airport, I'm pissed off, and I can imagine that you're going to hear from a lot more of them if we don't start getting ahead of it and putting it in our plan. So just my feedback.
Great. I appreciate that, Chris.
I've been telling people for the last,
I know you. That's what's so irritating, Scott.
It wasn't in the CIP last year, and Ben said that, I would anticipate you'll see something next year, and here we are next year, and now I feel like I let a bunch of people down because it's not here.
No, that's my point of frustration. Yeah. Ben, you've been here. The last 3, we've been asking for this. Clerk Slater, if we can make sure the minutes reflect that, we've now asked for it for 3 freaking years. I mean, this is I'm if you can't tell, a little heated about this, Ben, it's frustrating.
Yeah, no, I can appreciate that. Definitely, Chris. I appreciate the feedback too. Any other questions about the utility revolving fund? Great. All right, Cassie, can we move on to the next one, please? All right, so DDA fund, again, is a place where we see quite a few capital improvements. So one of the ones we've been talking about for a long time, based on the plans of the township, is the purchase of riverfront properties. This is really a item of opportunity as the properties that become available kind of between Tassel Park and the end of the residential properties on the Thornapple River Drive north of Cascade Road become available. The township board evaluates those opportunities on a case-by-case basis to see if there's something that we want to acquire. And again, that's tied back to the strategic direction of eventually developing a pedestrian-friendly waterfront in that area. 2 projects that the DDA had planned for 2020 that again didn't get completed because of the pandemic. Looking at a synthetic ice rink. So this is something that many DDAs in main streets across Michigan have been utilizing to kind of drive people into their DDA areas, holding events and whatnot. So people come into the DDA and hopefully eventually utilize the businesses. Synthetic ice rink is exactly what it sounds like. It's an ice rink that can be used any time of the year. You can actually use your regular ice skates on it as well, and it's mobile. So they're, again, looking at the possibility of doing that project. Also, LED lighting conversion down in the village area. This project was actually approved by the township, by the DDA and township board in 2020, but because of the lead time needed to get the equipment, won't be implemented until 2021. So the next 3 projects are all related to community gathering space. This is a project that the DDA initiated a couple of years ago and would like to revisit at this point. So don't know in what avenue, if they're going to come back with the same project, if they're going to go through another planning process, but they'd like to take a look at that again. What we did this time, which was different than the last time around, was we divided it up into sections. So you remember at one point it was just one big project. We've divided it up into sections now where you have the amphitheater, you have the streetscape project, which would be along Jack Smith and Thornbrook Drive. You have the gateway improvement, which would be a little bit further to the east of the kind of the gathering space area as you get towards Old 28th Street. And then there's actually part of this appears in the library section as well, with the sound garden and pathways. So those are all kind of interrelated. Bus stop installation. So the Township Board is once again considering what is going to happen with the bus service. The cost of that service has gone up significantly since the past year. And during the pandemic, the usage of the bus has obviously gone down significantly. So I think there's going to be another evaluation as to what the ultimate bus path is going to look like in the township. If that bus system does continue in the township, look to install actual bus stops in some strategic places in order to help facilitate the use of that. Cascade Office Park property. Again, we keep this in here as an opportunity. If you've reviewed the DDA plan, one of the items in that plan is to connect Northern Drive, which is a private street that comes off of 28th Street, to Star Drive, which is a public street that comes off of Patterson. In order to make that completion, there is one business kind of in between there that would need to be purchased. So again, this is just an item of opportunity. If that piece of property becomes available, the DDA would probably evaluate that opportunity to see if they wanted to purchase that or not. Lower Village Plan. This is a project that the DDA spearheaded this year to look at what the possibilities might be to utilize the new properties that the township owns in the village area, which would be the Tuffy Muffler and the doctor's office along the river. That project was tabled by the Township Board. It sounds like the DDA is interested in looking at the community gathering space project prior to revisiting this project. But of course, they may have an opportunity to switch those around as well. But right now, that appears in 2024. Then you get out to 2026, you have a 28th Street mid-block crossing project that appears in the plan, but they are interested in pushing that out as far as possible right now as they address some other items in the DDA. If they have any questions about the Downtown Development Authority section of the capital improvement plan?
I just have a question. It's Sue.
All right, Sue.
28th Street mid-block crossing. Without knowing very much about that, that sounds like an accident waiting to happen. So you want us to approve the CIP, but the things that are in it that may not, I mean, these are just ideas. That doesn't mean we're necessarily going to do everything.
Yeah, yep. So as I talked about at the beginning, it's really just a planning roadmap document. So there's certainly going to be capital improvement items that appear in the plan, and they have in the past. And when it comes for us to actually investigate those projects, it turns out that they're not feasible or they're no longer a priority of the Township Board anymore. So projects come in and out all the time. And quite honestly, the 28th Street mid-block crossing is pushed out as far as possible because I think the DDA wants to continue to evaluate the Cascade Road mid-block crossing to see if there's opportunities to make that safer and see if there's maybe other crossing technologies that might become available that would be approved by the Road Commission. So it's a long way to say no. Just because something in the CIP doesn't mean that the Township Board is now emphatically stating that this is a project that we're going to do. Again, just gives us a roadmap to take a look at what we're going to be investigating during these years.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions about the DDA? So the last one we're going to go to is the library fund. We have a couple projects in here as well. The library has been looking at a refresh project, and we're calling it a refresh project because there's not going to be any moving of external walls or anything like that over at the library. They really want to redo the inside of the library to be more congruent with how our current libraries are being utilized by the public. And to make sure that we are keeping up with the trends as well. Again, the library was open over 20 years ago now, so it's an opportunity for us to relook at that. We do have money allocated in the library fund to eventually replace the roof. Right now, talking to our engineers, they've really recommended that we review that possibility in 2023. This is originally a long time ago, a 2021 project. And when they looked at it last year, they indicated that the current roof is fine. So we'll again look at that in 2023. And then I mentioned the trail loop and the children's sound garden, which would be part of the investigation into that gathering space project. Any questions about the library section? And that is going to bring us to the end. So I know we asked some questions as we went along, but I'm more than happy to answer any further questions that the Planning Commission may have. And that's the end of the presentation.
Thank you, Ben. Does anybody have any questions of Ben? This is a resolution, so we'll have to do I think a roll call vote to approve that when the time comes. Does anybody
Mr.
have a
Chair,
question?
It's just a presentation.
No, there's a resolution included in the packet as well.
Oh, sorry.
It's at the end of your packet.
Yes, saw it.
Mr. Chair. I have a
Yes,
question.
Mr. Johnson.
Not a question, but just a comment to Ben and the staff and the Township Board. Thank you for all the work that you put into this. That's a very comprehensive plan. I know we've talked about some projects that aren't in there, some that are. Obviously, we understand that not all of it's going to come to fruition, but thank you for all the work and thank the staff on our behalf for all the work you've put into it as well.
I appreciate it, Phil. I also wanted to make a comment to Commissioner Nordike's comments as well. It's perfectly reasonable for the Planning Commission to suggest things to be in the plan as well. You know, as I talked about, you know, if it doesn't appear in a plan of the township, it can also be part of a policy. And I would certainly, if the Planning Commission was interested in approving the resolution with the recommendation that extension of at least water to the Berger Platte area be included in the plan, I would certainly entertain that as well.
You know, I would say that if you do that, I don't even know that you need to be that specific. You could just say potential residential water expansion. And, you know, maybe it's something deferrable in there, you know, that based on whatever planning occurs between the other entities involved. But I think having at least a mention of the potential of the project might be a good idea. As you mentioned earlier, sometimes that enables you to have better chances at grabbing grants and things too. If you can show that you've been planning for it, although I think in this instance, it's not necessarily a something we've planned for. It's a reaction to something that's happened.
Do we want to maybe put some language in that is very specific to the damage that's been caused by the airport, so that it's in the minutes, it's in the record, it's in our recommendation, so that the township at some later point does have something that is actionable, or at least a direction. I mean, we have a lot of citizens that we're accountable that are hot about this. And does it make sense to put language there? We've had the studies done now, folks. Like, we know that the water, and Ben, if you can validate that, I know because I've had mine tested and we found it, right? But you've seen it too. Like, this is real.
Yeah, so Eagle conducted, you know, there's really two investigations that are going on right now. So the airport itself is conducting the investigation of the PFAS actually found on the airport property. And then Eagle is actually the lead investigator for PFAS in the wells on what I'm commonly referred to as Berger Platte. And I know that there's houses that are outside Berger Platte as well, but that's the easiest way for me to identify it. And part of the trickiness came is up until basically this fall, late this fall, the Eagle did not find any water wells that had PFAS levels above the actionable threshold that they had identified, which was 70 parts per trillion. Now we know that that has changed since then. Our legislature has adopted an actionable level of 8 parts per trillion, which means that we do now have approximately 40 wells in this area that are tested above the actionable level for this. So we stay in contact with Eagle and the airport throughout the process. I know Eagle has issued notification letters to the airport. I believe they're waiting for the responses from the airport on how they're going to react to that at this point. But yes, at this point, I would say that Eagle has identified the airport as causing the pollution in the Berger Plat.
So as that's a known fact, I mean, and it's relevant in the sense that folks, we've had public officials, right, which we are all appointed, some of us elected, that have been charged this past week for water, damaging drinking water. So and I'm sorry, I'm being an activist on this, but I really think we have a duty to, amend this with language that we expect the township to earmark funds to provide water to those who have who've been polluted, and also hold the airport accountable. So there's my piece.
Anybody else have any discussion to add on that? I think Member Nordyke makes a good point there. I think it's the elephant in the room, and it probably should be in the plan. I think everybody is well aware of that. But any other talk or thoughts on this? No other questions of this whole presentation?
Ben does a good job.
He does do a good job. I will give him that. Well, let's see. Does somebody want to try and draft a motion here? I'm kind of pointing at you, Chris. You've made the most comments on this.
I can. Before I do, I want to make sure that there's no. If people feel other way, I don't want to push this through. But I guess I would make a motion that we recommend to the township that the CIP is amended to, and Ben, what's the number? I think it starts with 4, right?
Are you talking about expansion of what the cost is for the expansion of water sewer?
Yes.
I mean, I could give you a whole host of numbers between what it would cost just to extend water main to those that are testing above the limit, to a number that would extend water main to the entire Berger Plat and connect everybody.
What's the low and the high?
Let me ask a question here. Does the planning commission need to have that number in this motion, or do we just need to ask that the board include that in the final version of the CIP? I mean, what is there?
The number exists already, Scott. That's why that's why I'm asking for it, and I wanted it so that the board would have to directly address it, but
okay,
have to. That was where my line of thinking was with it. But
Ben, do you have an opinion on how we go about this?
That number is going to be anywhere between 2.5 and $10 million based on what the scope is of the work. If you're looking for water main to be extended to the entire Berger Plat area, I would indicate the project scope rather than the cost at this point.
So I would make a motion that we recommend to the township that they amend the CIP to include providing water to areas that have potentially been contaminated. And I think the issue is we can get the people that are today, but the way that the wells are all structured, they're pulling from the same source. So that, while it may test negative today, it could be positive tomorrow. So I just have them, we need to recommend to the township that they further study this and amend the CIB to include funds wherever they get these funds. That's a different conversation, but they need to include funds to provide remediation to those homes that have been affected.
All right, thank you for that motion, Member Nordike. Do we have support?
Member Deering supports.
Thank you, Member Deering. Is there any discussion on this?
Chair, I had just a question. Chris, you had mentioned remediation. I just want to make sure I'm clear. You're just talking about getting like clean drinking water.
Yeah,
right?
I was purposely I'll defer to the township the board to decide that, whatever they define remediation. I wasn't being specific on purpose, Brett, by using that word. Whatever they define remediation as, right? And that's something they're going to have to weigh out. But I think that we need, and again, this is just, I'm not making a suggestion that they take an action. I'm making a suggestion that they put money into the budget to accommodate and to do this, whatever they decide is right. The fact that we're just glossing over and doing nothing in the budget concerns me.
Okay.
Thank you, Member Katzma, for the question. And I think that being vague gives the board some flexibility there. I think that's good. Any other discussion? And this is oh yes, Member Rappin.
Perhaps my confusion, but I think the vagueness is what's throwing me here. And I'm not sure how to make a recommendation with the vagueness. And again, I just ask Manager Swayze for do you have a recommendation for how to address this most directly with what Member Nordike is expressing? Or can we confirm or reword what we're doing so I at least understand what we're voting on to make sure that it's clear, so there's appropriate direction for the board and the township staff to amend this correctly to what we're suggesting.
Can I interject one quick second before Member Swayze or Manager Swayze answers your question? And I would just say my thought was that we should be vague because none of us have really looked at any engineering plans on this or anything. So I don't think we should be trying to dictate the plan. But I'll let Manager Swayze.
To clarify my question, I'm not suggesting that we be specific in the remediation, but I've heard studies, I've heard correction. I don't know exactly what we're asking to be included.
So just to be clear, from the township's perspective, we've always held fast that remediation, however you want to define it for us, is extension of public water to all of the affected properties. As far as we have been concerned in the process, we think that is the only fair way to remediate this problem. And so again, there's a whole host of numbers, and I have to talk in generalities right now because I actually have a meeting with our engineer and our team tomorrow to talk about specific numbers. But based on the scope of the project, I could quote you a number anywhere between $2.5 and $10 million right now.
Okay.
Are you more comfortable now, Member Rappin, or are we?
Yes, I think the wording was further study and remediation as suggested by the staff.
Okay. All right, so we have a motion on the table from Member Nordike, supported by Member Deering. Any other discussion? Then Steve, could you facilitate the roll call vote for us? Or somebody? Could somebody do that, I guess?
I will.
Okay, I guess we'll do Member Slater. All right. She's
All right.
good at that. I hear you've got some experience with it.
Member Katzma,
Got it on mute. Support.
Member Johnson,
Support.
Member Moxley,
Or
Member Crater.
Support.
Sorry, Crater. Member Deering. Read your lips, but you're mute.
Support.
And Member Nordike,
Support.
Member Rappin,
Support.
Chairman Reese,
Support.
Member Slater. Yes, support. Carries 9-0.
All right. Ben, you got your resolution. I don't know if that went quite as quick as you had hoped, but there you go.
I thought it was a great conversation. Good job, guys.
Thank you. All right. And with that, we move on to Article 8, which is any other business. Does anyone have any other business this evening? I'm not hearing any. And with that, I would entertain a motion to adjourn for Article 9, unless somebody's thought of some business. I'm stalling here, but I'm not hearing anything.
So moved.
Member, support.
All right, I'm not sure who did the so move on that. Member Deering. Okay, so we have a motion from Member Deering, support from Member Katzma to adjourn. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? Of course not. Nobody ever opposes that. Motion carries. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us. Thanks again, Ben, for visiting.
Thanks.
We'll see you again next year.
Sounds
When we
good.
do the CIP.
See ya.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.